Welcome to the Healers Café, conversations on health and healing with Dr. Manon.
So welcome to the Healers Café, and today I have with me Toby Pasman, and he is a neurophysiology researcher who graduated from the University of Oregon in 2018 with a bachelor's degree in psychology, and then completed his master's of psychology through Lynn University in 2021. He has worked on the Emotions and Neuroplasticity Project at the Brain Development Lab at the University of Oregon while in undergrad, and learning EEG acquisition and artifacting. So I'm going to stop reading from here what your bio is and welcome you to this. And I guess my very first question is, how did all that begin for you? What got you into this, and how did you see the great healing potential in this study?
Yeah, great question. I'm so happy to be on your show, Manon. So as far as my kind of path into this field, I would say I took a biopsychology class while in undergrad, and I found that fascinating to just learn about how the brain actually is working and creating all of our thoughts, emotions, beliefs, just our whole perception of reality, based on kind of all of the chemical and electrical events that are taking place in our nervous systems. So that kind of led me to working at a research lab, as you were mentioning, where we're utilizing a technology called EEG, which stands for electroencephalography. It's kind of a mouthful, but basically what that enables us to do is to record the electrical activity that comes from someone's brain. So with a swim cap looking device, you were basically able to record the electrical brain waves that are coming from a bunch of different areas of a person's brain. And that was fascinating to me, just learning. I had no clue that we could even do that. But once I got involved with that, I was like, then sort of thinking, okay, well, is there a way this is what we're seeing as far as what the electrical activity of the brain is, but it got me thinking, is there a way to change that electrical activity? Can we modify it? And the answer to that is yes. There's several technologies such as neurofeedback or neurostimulation that can actually dramatically shift the electrical activity of the brain and can promote healing, better mental health, better cognitive performance in a variety of different aspects of our life. So that really kind of just set me off on that journey of trying to learn as much about these different technologies as I could, and then eventually getting into turning that into a career.
Mm-hmm. So, but to get excited about that, like, how did that first step? How did you know, one, that it was out there, or is it like curiosity leading to more curiosity, or was it something in your own life or family's life or friends, something that made you go, I need to go deeper in this. I need to check this out. Like, what led you there? Because I'm always curious, how do we end up doing what we're doing?
That's a great question. I was always a very like kind of self-aware and self-reflective kid, just growing up and wondering why I'm thinking the thoughts that I am, and wondering why people are behaving the way they are. Just thinking about thinking. I guess that it's sort of described as like metacognition. And I think I was always just that kid who was wondering about that. And that led me in high school just to reading a lot of like pop psychology and neuroscience books and following that. So it kind of was one thing led to another, but I just kind of followed my curiosity. I had no idea that I'd be able to like really do anything in a career sense with this stuff. I just thought it was kind of a cool sort of hobby to learn about how the brain works. But yeah, just kind of continuing to follow that curiosity really paid quite a lot of dividends.
Interesting. So I'm going to ask you a bunch of things that I've heard, and then you can tell me, oh, that's a myth, or no, that's true, and why that's true, and especially how it can be changed, right? So in many seminars I've gone to, they show this iceberg, and they say that's the tip of the iceberg, and there's this big, part that sunk the Titanic, that really is the cause of the damage that is created. And so some people call that the subconscious, and it appears to be this programmed from way back, could be from different generations even, and early childhood, at least till the age of 7, 4 to 7. That's in debate, I understand. But things that we don't have time to reflect upon and bring to consciousness. And then there's all the automatic behaviors of the body that are all automatic, and therefore we're not consciously thinking of breathing or digesting, or all of that, though there's always an element of it when we choose to, but much happens automatically. So if first of all, is that true? Is that still standing it? Yeah, that is still the sort of this moment of science. It's still what is being seen.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, and neuroscientists have just, the more they kind of probe into the conscious and subconscious, it becomes more and more apparent that, everything is really being driven by the subconscious, by what's under the surface, by these deep rooted thoughts and beliefs and ideas about the world that may not have, they didn't really come from us. They may have been instilled at a young age by parents or teachers or society. But we don't realize that we think that's who we are. And if we don't examine those kind of what's going on at the subconscious level, we might not realize that that's actually a lot of those things we kind of got programmed to believe.
Because I've also heard that in the subconscious, as far as thoughts, 80% of our thoughts are negative. And I'm like, how can one know that to be true? Is it because the chemicals that are set out from that negative thinking can be measured? Or how does one actually, how can you one can make a claim like that? And is that claim accurate?
Yeah, I've heard similar sort of statistics, and I'm assuming that just from the research that I've read, it's usually kind of like self-report kind of questionnaires. Unfortunately, we're not at the level of neuroscience where we can examine what someone, based on the chemicals they're producing or the electrical activity, we can sort of maybe get a sense of their moods or their tendencies towards specific kind of emotional states. But I can't necessarily say, we can't measure a thought yet in terms of that activity.
Okay, so I understand that, but how does frequencies, when they've done that study where the monks were all tapped up and they're at a very high level of frequency and at peace, and how does that tie into neuroscience? And how do you explain that? And what can be done? Is part of what the work you're doing now therapeutically allowing people to connect to these different frequencies? Is that how we get our brains back? Is that how you get the hippocampus to function? If you're losing memory, tell us a little bit more about all that.
Yeah, no, those are all great exploration questions. And yeah, I love the research. A lot of it was done, I believe, by a professor, Richie Davidson from the University of Wisconsin, who studied kind of the brain scans of these Tibetan Buddhist meditators, people who'd been meditating for long periods of time, and kind of examining, what's going on in their brains and why are they, kind of trying to figure out these people are so at peace with themselves and with the world, and experiencing these like great transcendent states that we all kind of want access to. So his sort of area of examination is like, okay, what's going on with the electrical activity of these people's brains that are enabling that to sort of occur. And there were some interesting findings from that, from those studies. One being that long-term meditators produce a lot more gamma waves than the average person. And gamma waves are kind of a lesser talked about brainwave. They're actually the fastest of all the brainwaves. And basically neuroscientists have kind of discovered that they play a big role in kind of our awareness, our ability to be intently focused and actively go about sort of solving different problems, along with sort of integrating information coming from different areas of our awareness. So kind of increasing this sort of awareness is sort of reflected with that really greatly increased gamma wave activity. There's also some just anatomical differences that are occurring in meditators' brains. So the functionality of the brain, or the functionality's changed, but also the anatomy of the brain has also changed from this long-term meditation. So they found meditators have a thicker corpus callosum, which is the sort of band of fibers that connect the right and left hemisphere. And that's been linked with a lot of positive kind of an ability to sort of transfer information between the left and right hemispheres of our brains a lot quicker. So that produces a lot of really beneficial results too. So there's lots of different ways to examine it, but what's clear is that meditation really does impact the brain in quite a profound way. And the longer that you do it and the more that you do it, the greater those results are seen to be. So I think that's the big takeaway is just the power of meditation there.
Yeah, and there's lots of studies, like you mentioned, on that. But how does that the mechanism by which meditation works and the gamma waves, and whether it's tapping into I don't know if you know Chris Duncan, but he did this whole thing on the superconscious. Many people talk about that, and intuition, and it's a way of putting things together, pulling in information. Maybe it's to do with the fact that, like you're saying, left and right brain hemispheres are firing back and forth and connecting. But when you do work like with like, what is the work one does with neuroscience, and how, like, why would a person decide, oh, I want to do this kind of work, or this would be beneficial for me, or sort of what are the questions that they would be asking themselves if they decide, okay, meditation does this, but working with neuroscience does this? I'm not sure if my question is clear.
Yeah. So yeah, if I'm understanding you correctly, like the neurotechnology, these different tools such as neurofeedback or neurostimulation, they're, I would say kind of the progression of sort of meditation technology, in the sense that, so meditation, we know alters the brain waves in specific ways. For instance, you and I right now are probably producing mostly beta brainwaves, along with the listeners, just people, if we're just kind of actively engaged in kind of our day-to-day activities, thinking about things, cognitively processing, we're producing mostly beta waves. Now, when someone meditates and kind of turning their awareness inward, you start producing more, you drop down into producing more of these alpha waves. And alpha brain waves are really important for kind of relaxation, also increasing people's ability to learn, process, and recall a lot of information really quickly. And then what happens with like people who've really been doing meditation for a while, they actually are able to sink into even deeper brainwave states. So they start to be able to produce theta brainwaves in their meditation sessions. And theta is kind of like the bridge between the conscious and subconscious mind. So a lot of kind of integrative experiences and aha moments are taking place when people are able to sink into a theta brainwave pattern. And basically with neurotechnologies, we're able to kind of short circuit the process, in the sense that it might take a meditator, a long time to be able to eventually sink into producing theta waves through their meditation. But I could put a couple of electrodes on someone's brain and specifically stimulate a theta frequency. So then their brain is going to just directly entrain to that frequency that's being stimulated. So it's a similar sort of mechanism in terms of altering brain waves and the electrical activity, both with meditation along with kind of these newer neurotechnologies. But these different technologies can really accelerate the process quite dramatically.
So, I mean, that saying that nerve cells that what is it called, that fire together? No, that what I forgot. I keep
Yeah, that fire together, wire together.
Yeah, that's right. So basically, wiring together. Here, you're aiming specifically at rewiring to increase, let's say, like the theta wave or whatever. That's exactly what this technology can facilitate. So give us an example of, I mean, we know there's musics that bring this about, but what is the technology? I'm just seeing this like big thing on your head and all these electrodes, but what is the most kind of easy, popular way available? And I know there's all these devices you can buy that have binaural beats. And could you tell us a little bit about all of that general technology?
Sure. So you're absolutely right in the sense that they're like neurotechnology is becoming like more and more prevalent, and there's all sort of different devices, and it's difficult for people who are interested in this sort of stuff to be able to like figure out like what works and what's going to be helpful for them. So
hi, I'm Dr. Manon Bolliger, and I wanted to take a moment to thank you for watching these podcasts. If you haven't subscribed, please do. Also, feel free to leave comments and like it. This way, more people get to find out about this work and about other choices for health. So I think it's really important that we all share this information. I have a free gift to you. It's a 7-sequence email that has tips for every day, and it's a little insight about how to live your life when it comes to health. And it's very much built on how I managed to overcome stage 4 cancer and what it took. So I would love you to have this, and thank you once again for listening to these podcasts.
I would say, kind of answering your question as far as kind of what a main sort of popular technology would be, I'd say neurofeedback is something that's been around for several decades. And basically what neurofeedback does is it enables someone to rewire their brain based off real-time feedback. So for instance, someone might be wearing an EEG cap, being able to measure so a computer's measuring the electrical brain waves that they're producing. And then they're playing, say, a game like on the computer, but they're playing the game with their mind. So basically you might be watching the screen, and if you're training someone to, say, produce more alpha waves, you're training someone to be able to relax and sink into that deeper kind of alpha state. The screen would then get bigger whenever you're producing more alpha waves. that would be visual feedback, or it could also be audio feedback where maybe you're listening to music that intensifies in volume when you produce more alpha waves. So that's like the positive feedback. And then when your brain, say you start thinking about some specific problem and getting back kind of into your logical mind, you usually start producing more beta waves. So then the computer measures that you're producing less alpha waves and takes away that reward. So then you'd see the screen shrink in size, or maybe the audio gets quieter. So that's the feedback portion. So it's basically telling your brain, good job, you're doing well, you're producing the desired brain waves, or no, you're deviating now from what we want you to do. So it basically can guide the brain to produce more or less of whatever brainwave frequency that you're wanting to do. And I think what's really important to mention here is that there's so many different neurofeedback technologies and protocols, and it can be difficult to kind of understand where to get started. And I think it's really important that like the technology that is usually started with the brain mapping, that like the QEEG brain mapping, it's basically quantified electroencephalography. So we touched on earlier what just a kind of regular EEG is, recording the brain waves, and a quantified electroencephalography basically just turns those brain waves into a visualized representation. So then you can see, you can see the areas of overactivity or underactivity in a specific brainwave, and you can also see where that's going on in the brain. So, for instance, someone who already produces a lot of these alpha brainwaves, maybe they have no trouble getting into these relaxed states. If you were to do a neurofeedback protocol that's training them to produce even more alpha waves, that might not be too beneficial for them. Whereas for someone who struggles with anxiety or PTSD, training someone to increase alpha waves is likely to be highly beneficial. So it's really important to do the initial assessment where we can actually see each person's very unique kind of electrophysiology, and then be able to determine kind of what a good protocol, a good neurofeedback protocol would be for that individual.
So where does one go for that kind of assessment?
Yeah, so traditionally, people would go to a psychologist, psychiatrist, some neurologists use this technology. It's going to become more and more prominent in sort of the peak performance or wellness space. So that is something that kind of, as this technology becomes more affordable, more people learn about it, it's going to, the uses are going to start shifting. But for, at this current moment, if people were wanting to do, say, neurofeedback or to get a brain map, you'd likely find that service at your local psychologist or psychiatrist's office.
Okay. Yeah. So it needs to be done through like a living brain scan, or it's through the electrodes typically?
So the brain maps are done with the electrodes. So that's where I think most practitioners who utilize, say, neurofeedback, they often do start with a brain map. And it's a simple kind of non-invasive process where a technician will basically put an electrode cap on you and squirt each electrode with some electrode gel and kind of swirl it around and make sure you have really good connection. And then they'll do like a 10-minute recording with a person's eyes open, and then another 10-minute recording with their eyes closed. So that basically provides enough data to then at that point be able to see what's really going on in that person's brain. And then from there, put together a good sort of treatment plan based on that person's unique neurophysiology.
Interesting. And what are the links? Because I run a college called Bowen College, so I teach other healthcare practitioners how to do this work, and it's a gentle, non-invasive pain elimination methodology that resets the body, mostly, through the fascia and the free neurons, but also through the parasympathetic system, because it puts people in a deep relaxation, and in that, it would appear that the body just knows what to do and it heals. So it's often seen as like, this is magic, it's crazy, but it's simple, and people resist all things that are simple, that work well and don't require, a whole bunch of pills and everything. But I'm wondering, and because I'm also very interested in the mind, and that part of my program actually deals with our thoughts, our beliefs, and just understanding all of that stuff. But what have you seen with this technology that I'm not familiar with, that might explain, or the correlation between pain? Because that pain is very subjective, and that's been well studied, that the same sort of findings will bring different levels of pain experience. And pain is also contextual, right? Yeah, there's no two exact identical people experiencing the apparent same thing the same way. So what can you share, from your background, that would impact positively, or could be used at the same time? Or yeah, I'd love to know more about that.
Yeah. So in terms of the way I see in my work and in research, the way the way pain often shows up in the brain is through overactivation of the cingulate, and the cingulate is kind of a structure that kind of runs right down the midline of the brain, and it's often overactive in the beta brainwave frequency. So it's kind of indicating kind of a hyper arousal, a hyperactive nervous system. And it sounds like, kind of from the technology that you're describing, that you utilize and your college utilizes, there's a lot of similarities in what these neurotechnologies are often doing, which is to kind of calm that fight or flight response, which is usually kind of a beta, an overproduction of these beta brainwaves, especially the higher frequency of beta brainwaves that are linked with, anxiety, racing thoughts, OCD, pain. It's kind of just a general overactivation of the nervous system. So any technology that's, whether that be massage or acupuncture or meditation or neurofeedback, they all have this same sort of mechanism, the way I see it, in common, which is to kind of quiet the sympathetic nervous system and activate the parasympathetic nervous system, which is enabling people's bodies and brains to heal and really get the deep relaxation that they need to heal, that they might not be getting if they've been just chronically overworked and stressed out, or have a condition like PTSD where they're sort of reliving that trauma over and over. Technologies like this can be really impactful to sort of get people out of that over aroused, agitated state.
Yeah, so it's interesting. So you're seeing it like it's another technology. It's basically it, like whether it's your hands, like mine, it's just with hands and it's very light touch. So different than massage, but it stimulates, and maybe that's not the right word in this context, because stimulates seems like it's hyper, but it regularizes. It's not sedating. It's neither one or the other. It just basically allows the nervous system to receive the message that it's not in fight or flight right now. That here we are present, and so much happens when people are in that state, including old memories, other things that release their emotional patterns. And so, I've been doing that for 30 years and just absolutely fascinated, but I'm always, I'm a learner, right? So I love what else can we do? And so if people are receiving one thing, is this like it's just another way in another door to a similar type of end result, or do you see it differently, or are there so-called exercises to go with, or things that help patients in this direction that reinforces this work?
Yeah. So I guess to answer the sort of first part of the question of in terms of the way if I see the technology sort of differing uh, from other ways of kind of healing the body and brain, I would say that the neuromodulation sort of work that I do is definitely more targeted in the sense of we're taking a thorough assessment of each of the different electrical brain waves and seeing, looking at a lot of different metrics of kind of the connectivity between different areas of the brain, how fast signals are getting sent from area to area, um, uh, measuring a lot of different variables. So you can really go pretty deep in sort of brain training and really dial in exactly what you want to enhance or diminish. So I would say, yeah, it's the way I view it is definitely a more targeted approach,
Mhm.
and it can be particularly useful for people, say like we've been talking about neurofeedback a lot. That really kind of got its start with uh, using it for children with ADHD
Right.
who had kind of failed a lot of traditional like, stimulant medications, and they found that neurofeedback kind of was able to help these kids produce more of those. Really, what they were training is a low beta frequency
Yeah.
that was really important for attention and focus. So, a different technology, just some general relaxation thing, might be pretty similar if someone was also doing one of these neurofeedback protocols that was also working on relaxation. But there's a lot more nuances, I would say, to
Right, right.
this
Yeah.
based on what the goal is, and that
Mhm.
that can differ quite a bit from client to client or patient to patient.
Mhm. Well, our time is like almost up there. Or probably it is up. I had one more question for you though. Memory. Um, what are you seeing is the issue? It's actually a very personal question because for some reason I'm noticing now my memory is going. It's very strange, and it's not diet. I'm not stressed out that I'm aware of, and I'm reasonably aware. What what would one do for memory?
That's a
And
great
it's not
question.
aluminum, and it's not like it's not, a series of unnecessary procedures that have gotten me there.
Yeah. So in terms of how that might kind of show up, if you or someone else who is kind of reporting issues
Yeah,
with memory, I can't say for certain
of
because
course.
every person's brain will show up differently. But oftentimes, what we see is underactivity in the temporal lobes. And the temporal lobes are kind of right above and behind your ears. Uh, and those lobes are very important for memory. And when there's diminished activity, whether that be from just general aging or a blow to the head with a concussion, the temporal lobes are super susceptible just based on their location to damage based on blows to the head.
Mhm.
In terms of ways to increase that activity in the temporal lobes, I would say, from what we've discussed, like meditation is a great way that just boosts overall blood flow to the brain.
Mhm.
Taking like an herb like ginkgo biloba is a great way to also kind of increase blood flow, and they've seen that it increases blood flow in that specific region of the brain. And then also just kind of dialing in on on sleep and nutrition, exercise. Really, all of those things are going
To
to
help.
to be kind of the big regulators of your brain's ability to produce enough of these neurochemicals and electrical activity and get enough blood flow to perform optimally.
Mm-hmm.
So it's oftentimes, kind of really dialing in on the basics that makes the biggest impacts for people.
Great. Well, anyway, this was very informative, and yeah, thanks for sharing that, because I realized that, yeah, you could probably see it where the area is, so they're very cool. It's exciting. So, good. Well, thank you so much. And where can people find out more about your practice, or more about you if they want to reach out? Like, I guess underneath our talk, there'll be ways to reach. Is there anything you want to leave with people where they can reach you also?
Yeah, I would encourage people to head over to roscoeswetsuitneuro.com. For listeners, I'll just spell that out. It's ROSCOES wetsuit, WETSUIT, neuro, NEURO.com. And you can learn all about these different technologies. There's a lot of information on my website that thoroughly explains the different brainwaves, the different technologies to assess brainwaves, and then how to actually alter those brainwaves with neuromodulation technology. So you can read all about it, and I'll soon be offering neuromodulation services, including neurofeedback and brain mapping and neurostimulation, along with a couple others, to clients who are interested in peak performance in the Miami, Fort Lauderdale area. So if you are in that area and you're interested in kind of seeing what your brain's doing and getting the most out of your cognitive performance, that will be something that will be available beginning in November of this year.
Oh, excellent. Okay. Well, thank you very much, Toby. And I'll let you know when this comes out.
It was a pleasure being on, and thank you so much for the opportunity to be here.
Thank you for joining us at the Healers Café with Dr. Manon. For more information, go to drmanonbolliger.com.